Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of RiesKitchen. Today we're going to be making an asparagus and ricotta quiche on a gluten-free base. Light, delicious, and if nothing says spring like fresh asparagus. It's not very hard, and we're going to whip this up really quickly. So let's get straight into it, shall we? So first up we have, of course, the star of the show, some asparagus. We have some plain flour, gluten-free of course, some xanthan gum, an egg, parmesan, butter, olive oil, ice water. And then for the filling, we've got some salt, nutmeg, eggs, ricotta, and more parmesan. Now let's start on our pastry. Of course you can use a pre-made square of pastry if that fits your dish, but you're not going to get that lovely bit of parmesan in the crust, and it really is pretty easy to make the pastry. So let's do it. So in my food processor, and you want your soft blade, not your cutting blade for this, we're just going to add our dry ingredients. And xanthan gum just helps this pastry stay a bit crisp. I'm going to throw in a pinch of salt and my parmesan and give that a quick pulse just to mix it all up. Now we're going to add our chilled butter cubes, and I'm going to pulse this until it resembles fine breadcrumbs, just like you would if you were rubbing it in by hand. It's just easier with the machine. Let's have a peek. Not quite, there's still a couple of big lumps of butter in there. Yeah, and you can see that that's a lovely fine yellowy colour with no big lumps of butter. Now our next step is to add our liquids. So I'm going to be running the machine and add the egg and the oil, run it for a little minute, and then start adding our ice water. Now my recipe says you add 60 mils, which is 4 tablespoons. It might take 3 tablespoons, it might take 5. Let's just see what the flour's doing, and you'll see it form a ball as we go. All right, so I'm just going to pop my egg, my oil, and get it going. You can see it's all starting to come together, but although that's 4, I'm going to need to add a 5th today. It's a bit crumbly still. And the machine is literally kneading it for us. Short crust pastry is the easiest to make this way. You can see that that's all come together. I'll put that on my mat, that will be one solid ball. So although my machine has done most of my kneading, I'm just going to bring it all together. Make sure I get one nice ball. Well, it feels really good to touch. That's going to be a great pastry. So I'm wrapping it just in some cling film and popping it in the fridge to rest for about half an hour. So while our pastry's resting, I've got my oven starting to heat up at 170 centigrade fan forced, of course. So now let's start on our filling. So 3 eggs. And I'm just going to beat them just a little to help start this process. And then the wonderful ricotta. Ricotta means that I didn't need to add cream or milk, and it gives it that creaminess, but it makes it a much lighter filling. So I'm just going to break that up with my fork. Now I'm going to add my parmesan. I've freshly grated. Of course you can buy the pre-grated if you wish. Now this is an unusual filling for those used to making like a quiche Lorraine or whatever that's got quite a liquid filling. This will melt and go gooey and gorgeous, but a minute. It's exactly what I'm expecting. I'm going to add a little bit of salt, although the parmesan does add a bit. Some cracked pepper and a grate of fresh nutmeg. So let's start by talking about our dish. I'm using a quiche pan today. You know it's a quiche pan because it's got the bottom that separates. If you don't have a quiche pan, you can use a baking dish. And what you need to do is then line that with some baking paper to help you get the quiche out. I'm also using a perforated quiche pan. Now these are fabulous because it means I don't need to blind bake. If your quiche pan doesn't have the holes in it, you will need to, once we've rolled our pastry, put your pastry in, a little ring of paper in the bottom and some beads, and blind bake it for 15 minutes so that it's fine and not soggy when the quiche is cooked. But these perforations are a game changer, as I've said before in some of my other videos. So that's my quiche pan. Now I've got the star of the show, which is the asparagus. Asparagus comes in white, green and purple. If it comes in anything else, please leave me a message on my blog. I'd be interested to know. So with the younger or thinner the stalks, and the younger the stalks, the less you need to do in preparing. If you had some that were big and fat, other than white ones, if you had some that were big and fat like this, you would need to peel them and blanch them and do all sorts of things. But these are beautiful and young and we don't need to. But what you find is that the end gets a bit woody because it's the older bit. The easiest way to remove the wood is to just snap them. That bit is going in the compost. But the important thing that I need to do today is I want to make this a bit decorative, and I'm going to want to put them so that I can arrange them in my dish. So I'm going to end up with all of these bits are going to be a bit too long. So the bits that are too long to do the decorative bit on my dish, I'm going to chop really finely and mix through. I'm not going to waste anything, and mix it through our cheese mix so they're coming through underneath. And then these will go on top to be decorative. So now, on my mark, yep, it's going to go in, and I'm just going to finely chop these to be mixed up through my mix. So now let's just mix through our little bits of asparagus. All right, it's time to roll our pastry. So just a little bit of flour on my mat. I don't want too much. Pop our pastry, which is nice and chilled. And the reason that we chill it, and we're going to chill it again once we put it in the base, is it helps stop it shrinking. It does make it harder to roll though. Oh, it's very cold. So I'm pretty sure that this is close. It's about 3 to 4 mil thick. I pop my outside of my dish on, and I can see that I have not only the size, but I have enough to come up on the sides. So that's pretty good to go. And then pop it over your dish. Now, if it breaks, like mine has just then, it's not the end of the world, so don't panic. Get a little ball of pastry. And what we're going to do, we're just going to use that to push it into the sides first, and then we'll do any repairs that we need to. Oh, it really is wanting to crumble all over the place today. So although I'm a little devastated that the one I'm doing on video has broken, it's probably a really good thing to show you what happens at home. And of course, gluten-free pastry can be temperamental. So those of you who can eat a normal diet don't know how lucky you have it. But let's just roll this bit out. It's starting to get a bit warm from my hands, but let's see how we go. So I just want a nice little bit. And then knife. So I need to do that edge. So I'm just going to cut myself a little bit here, because I'm going to fill an edge that's broken away. And then what I need is that egg white that was left over from making the pastry, because we only used the yolk. Just give it a little beat just so that it's a bit looser. And then with a pastry brush, just brush your pastry, and then I'm going to put this piece on, and it's going to work like a glue. And once we've got it all ready, no one's going to know that you cheated. So I'm going to pop this back in the fridge for 10 minutes just to firm up before we add our filling in. So we have our very chilled case now. There are many ways to trim it. I can run my rolling pin around the edges, or I'm just going to use my knife here and just trim off some of the excess. You'll notice that I've also put my quiche pan on another baking tray. That's just out of habit, having had a couple leak once upon a time. This mixture is unlikely to leak because it's so thick, not like, as I said before, a quiche Lorraine or similar where you have basically an egg custard that can leak. So again, don't stress if you've got little cracks or little bits, but just trim some of that pastry off. So the final stages. Let's pop our eggy, cheesy mixture in. Right, so I'm just trying to even it out a little. This will liquefy a little bit before it solidifies, which sounds a bit odd, but you just want it roughly even out. And now we get to do our decoration again with our spears. That's pretty even. I'm pretty happy with that. So that goes into the oven now for 35 to 40 minutes. What we're after is it'll go a lovely golden and it'll still be a little jiggly in the middle, so not 100% set. But that's fine because we then need to let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes before we can cut it, and that'll all even it out as the temperatures even out. So 35 to 40 minutes in a 170 degree oven, fan forced. So let's have a look. It's a little brown. Bit jiggly in the middle still. So, as always, the hard bit's in the waiting. And we have to let this sit here now for at least another 10 minutes just to cool a little and solidify before I take it out, especially with gluten-free, because otherwise it'll just crumble. Now, for all the details of today's recipe, don't forget to check out my blog at the link below. But as always, the best bit's in the eating, and this little black duck is starving. The pastry just melts in your mouth, and you've got that sharpness of the parmesan and the creaminess of the ricotta, and then that lovely freshness of asparagus. This is such a winner of a quiche. I hope your family enjoys it as much as mine do. Until next time, everybody, ciao.